Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, where we will explore what it means to work, live, and play in the Bayou region. Join us as we take a deeper dive into the people and experiences that make our region such a special place to live and work. On each podcast, we will talk to individuals who are making our region grow and go, who are making strides in uplifting our community. This is a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Hello, and welcome to Bridging the Bayou. I am your host, Chancellor Kristine Strickland, here at Fletcher Technical Community College. And we are excited to have Representative Jerome Z. Zeringue with us, representative of District 52 here in our region. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, look, we are going to start out our podcast with what I'm calling 5 on 5. So we have 5 questions for you, and we're going to take about 5 minutes to get your answer. So a little speed round question to kind of get things moving. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Question number 1. What inspired you to pursue a career in public service?
Well, public service kind of just followed along in what I was going to do after I got my degrees from LSU and in fisheries biology. My first job was here in Terrebonne Parish, and it was basically working as a fisheries biologist, working with coastal fishermen, working on improving. It was kind of interesting. It was at that time where TEDs, turtle excluder devices, were coming out. And you can imagine the opposition that was generated from fishermen having to put, which is essentially a hole in their net. So it was just an interesting time for the industry. And so that job kind of led to working with the oyster industry. I missed Mike Voisin, who we missed desperately, who was such an advocate for the oyster industry. But we'd go to Washington at least 5 to 6 times a year because at that time the Food and Drug Administration was trying to shut down the Louisiana oyster industry because of Vibrio vulnificus. So we were advocating and working with FDA to ensure that the industry could work. So from that, it progressed to working on the Mandalay Wildlife Refuge. So I worked for the Nature Conservancy for that, and then after that went to the Terrebonne Living Conservation District. So in and out, I was always dealing with politics within the professions that I had. So it kind of just, after I was working with CPRA, Gordy was in office, representative. He was termed out. It was an open seat. And so I figured, well, that was the best time to do it. So I just decided to pursue it then.
Well, fantastic. It actually sounds like your whole life has been about public service to some extent.
For the most part,
All
yeah.
right, so this is just a new part of that journey for
That's
you.
right.
All right, so question number 2. If you could recommend one book that's influenced you or that's had a significant impact on you, what would it be?
I would say one of the books that influenced me and I enjoy the most reading was probably A River Runs Through It. It was, a great book in terms of both, just depicting what it was involved in I love to fly fish and what's involved in fly fishing, but also the spirit and culture of the people who grew up way back when and inspired him to become a writer and a professor at Chicago University, but also just inspired a lot of people. It's just a great book.
Fantastic.
In fact, Dan Rather, I don't know if it's true or not, but they said that Dan Rather, whenever someone would work at CBS, it was required reading, that he would require them to read that book before they actually started work. Whether that's true or not, that's what I heard.
Wow, that's interesting. I haven't read that one. I'll have to pick it up. All right, question number 3. What's a hidden gem or a favorite place in your district that you think more people should know about?
Well, the Mandalay Wildlife Refuge. Yeah, that was one of the first jobs that I had working for the Nature Conservancy and helping establish that. And I think it's a great opportunity to get out and see what the coast and the wetlands of Louisiana represent. And I think it's a jewel that we have around here. And I think it's an opportunity for people to get out in nature and see what we have.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, question 4. We're almost to the end here. Tell us about a mentor or a person who has had a significant influence on your life, either personally or professionally.
Well, you want to say Jesus, of course. Obviously.
There you go.
No, I would say in terms of my scholastic career, I was in graduate school and I was on a track to go to pre-med and thinking, and then I realized, I'm not serious enough to finish that. I would never finish it. And then I had a professor. One of the things that I like to do, as I mentioned, is fish. And so I took an I took ornithology, but I took an ichthyology class for fisheries because I thought it was interesting in fish. And I had a professor who would often say, I have friends who are doctors and stuff, and they make a lot of money, but they're just some of the most unhappy. They just, not really, you need to pursue what you really enjoy and do what you want to do. And so that kind of inspired me and led me on a road that I went to get my master's in fisheries biology and work on some other things. So I'd say probably from a both scholastic and professional influence, he probably had the most significant in terms of direction in which I ultimately took the path that I am on now.
Yeah, that's great advice. I just want to take a moment to say, I think one of the things here at Fletcher that's really important to us is that we have a lot of students who come in and say maybe that going to a university was something that was expected of them or pursuing a particular career path, and knowing that there's just this wide range of opportunities, even in your community, whether you choose to go, for instance, in our region to Nichols or to Fletcher, there's just a lot. So pursue that passion, right? Great advice. And then last for five, what's the one thing you enjoy doing to unwind when you are away from the demands of the legislature?
Well, I like to fish. That's pretty
All
much my
right.
getaway. And just spend time. I'm lucky. I've kind of outkicked my coverage. I got a beautiful wife that I enjoy spending time with. So being with her and just doing whenever I can, go out there and go fishing and enjoy the wetlands and being outside in Louisiana is great experience.
Wonderful. Do you get to do it often?
No, unfortunately, not as much as I'd like.
Not as much as you'd like. Okay. Well, we're going to turn our attention to some other topics now, but thanks for playing along with our 5 for 5. Appreciate that. So, as we are taping this, we are actually getting ready to head into a special session. And we know that there are a number of tax proposals that are currently in the works. Those have sort of been released out publicly. I'd like for you just to share your impressions on what you think is the biggest opportunity, tax or otherwise, in this special session for our state.
Well, ultimately, it's until the bills are filed, we'll have a clearer picture of what is being proposed. We have a good idea, and we've seen the initial drafts of legislation that are being proposed. And I think for the most part, the biggest opportunity that presents itself is the fact that it has the potential to completely change our antiquated and bureaucratic taxing structure within Louisiana and the way we budget and finance the state. So we obviously need to change what we do and how we do it. Whether this is the answer, I'm not sure. I think it's going to be important to go through the process, but I think it gives us an opportunity to reevaluate and look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and make some changes and tweaks. Whatever happens, this is the first intensive or expansive look at restructuring the budget since the Constitution in 1974 was restructured. So within 5 decades, it's been that long since we've been operating. It's been modified, but for the most part, operating for the same way. And there is no doubt that we can do and should do a better job in how we budget for the state and utilizing our tax structure to help the citizens, but also incentivize business and work toward maintaining and improving higher education and all the other things that are important to the state, infrastructure and all the other things that we need to work on. And this will give us an opportunity to look at how we can make some changes and make some improvements. And I hope that's the case. So the opportunity is there. Now, how we utilize it and capitalize it will ultimately be determined in what we pass in the session.
Well, and it sounds like one of the bigger opportunities is just having the conversation. And obviously, since it hasn't been sort of on the table, so to speak, since that last Constitution, and so much time has elapsed, just the openness of this legislature to actually come to the table, have the conversation, and work through these issues and challenges, that's a pretty big step in and of itself.
It is. And Secretary Nelson, who has been working on this, and I think to his credit, is well-intentioned in terms of looking at some of these things from a broader perspective of making improvements. And I think from what he's indicated, and I haven't seen it, but from the Tax Foundation, what's being proposed would bring Louisiana, which is in the bottom third in terms of the tax when you look at the policies within the state for tax policy, we're in the bottom third of the United States. A majority of what's being proposed pass would put us in the top third or within the top 10 is what they're saying.
Oh, wow.
It would be interesting to see how we accomplish that, but all indications are that these changes would have a positive effect on the people and businesses in Louisiana.
Well, we're definitely going to look forward to watching carefully and seeing what comes out of it. By the time this podcast airs, probably this special session will be in the books and we'll all be eating some Thanksgiving turkey, hopefully with some family. Any predictions? Might be fun just to see what you think might happen and then go back and watch this and see if you were right.
Sure. I predict the Saints will not win the Super Bowl. And I think
you're on the money with that one.
And I think, well, hopefully I predict we'll get a few people to watch this despite the interviewee. But I think we will make some changes within the session, and I think we will make some positive changes that will have a positive influence on the people and the businesses of Louisiana. I think we're going to get something done. I think the governor has indicated a willingness and desire to work with folks to address concerns. I know there's obviously been concerns with local governments and some of the impacts of the inventory tax and how franchise tax will affect businesses, the corporate income tax and other things. But collectively, I think we'll make some changes and we'll have a positive effect on the budgeting and the tax structure of Louisiana.
Great. Wonderful. We're going to look forward to it with anticipation. So after we get through the special session, then all eyes and attention probably will turn to the 2025 legislative session. And just wondering, what are your top legislative priorities for the upcoming session? What would you like to accomplish?
Well, obviously, in regard to the district, the important things to us are coastal restoration and protection. We've made some significant advancements in terms of providing protection to the people in Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish, because we have to look at it from a regional perspective because the system is going to work together. So I think continuing to work on both the flood protection and restoration aspect, I think we have a unique opportunity in this region with Fletcher, with Nichols, with higher education, and how its ability to both get people to come to the region to both utilize those facilities, but also provide opportunities for a lot of the people that without these institutions they wouldn't have. So I think that's important to continue to support with Blue Works and the other things that are the research facilities and the other things that are on the horizon that I think are going to be important for not only Fletcher and Nichols in the region, but also from the scientific and looking at the not probability, but possibility of bringing a bunch of people here that will utilize these facilities to do research that not only affect us, will affect Gulf-wide and important fisheries and wetlands and coastal issues that are so important to us. So I think there's a lot of things that we'll continue to work on, and obviously we will probably have to do some things based upon the special session. So this is airing after that session. So we've accomplished some things in special session. And so this upcoming session, we will have to tweak and probably utilize the legislative process to kind of clean up or address some of the things that we couldn't address in special session that I think will be important to ensure that the positive things that we've done in the special session will continue.
Excellent, excellent. And, just let me take a moment to say thank you. You've always been such a tremendous advocate, both in your public service, and we talked about that sort of across the entirety of your career, such a commitment to coastal protection, such a commitment to our environment here in our region and the important role that plays. So thank you for doing all of that and really dedicating your life to that work. So, again, looking forward to seeing all of the good things that will come out of that regular session. So, if I'm going to be a good chancellor, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about Fletcher. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what you see as Fletcher's role in our community and, anything that you'd like to highlight that you think is important about Fletcher Technical Community College.
Okay, as I lift the Fletcher cup here. And
Perfect.
there we go.
Perfect.
I think obviously Fletcher is, and I appreciate the kind words you said, but I think it's important that we recognize your contribution and what you've
Thank
done
you.
because you've had a significant impact on making Fletcher what it is today and its regional influence in terms of providing opportunities for so many people and expanding those opportunities.
Yeah.
So appreciate you and what you've done here. So Fletcher does just that. I think what it does is it gives people opportunities to improve their lives and the lives of their families because again, the 4-year degree is not fit for everyone. And so I think, and some people aren't necessarily prepared for that. So what I think Fletcher can serve the role in not only providing opportunities for people to get certifications and experience and things that they can improve professionally to help them and their families, but also put them on a track to prepare them if their intent is to go to a 4-year institution or prepare them for college as well. So it serves many roles and many functions, but first and foremost, I think it allows for people an opportunity to improve their lives and the lives of their families.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think one of the things that has always spoken to me about what we do in community colleges is that the vast majority of our students are from in the region, right?
Mhm.
They are living, they're working here, they're your neighbors. But at the same time, once they graduate, these are the individuals who then go back into our community. So they're not moving away. They're staying right here to better our own community. And that's what excites me about the work that we do here every day.
Right. And it's true that, the people who come to Fletcher and the people, as you indicated, who graduate from Fletcher, either through certification or with the degrees, are the taxpayers in providing the funding that the local
Absolutely.
entities need to help fuel and maintain those communities as well. So not only are they improving their lives, they're also improving the community as well, and that's important. And I think that's, again, another advantage that Fletcher provides to the people in the region.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we talk a lot about when we get together as a system, right, is that one of the things that the state needs is more taxpayers, right? We need more revenue coming in. And that's what we do. We help elevate, we help lift up families and communities in that way by helping people get access to great jobs that are high demand, high wage, right? And that they're staying in their communities and they're reinvesting there. So completely and totally agree with you on that.
And I couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, wow. Thank you. So I do want to talk a little bit about this upcoming session. Certainly, as always, right? When we're talking about finances and budget, everybody's go-to is, well, the only two places to cut are higher education and healthcare. And I know certainly there's been a lot of articles recently, some committee hearings on education's budget and sort of the future of funding for higher education. But I'd like for you just to take a minute to talk a little bit about how you see us as a state working to ensure that we have adequate funding, not just for higher education, but for education across the gamut, K through 12, higher education, because we know that right now, critical importance.
Mhm.
Education, right? Good, strong community education, and that development of that workforce. So maybe you could talk a little bit about any thoughts you have around how we can continue to really stabilize and invest in our education systems.
Well, I'm proud to say, since I've been in office, that the legislature has made significant contributions in terms of increasing what we provide to higher education,
Yeah.
which I think is important, that we invest in higher education, not just higher education, but K through 12 as well, and keeping the best and brightest here in regard to higher education, but also setting the stage. Dr. Brumley, I think, has done a great job, Secretary of Education, in helping to change the educational system and structure that we have in Louisiana. And we've made some significant contributions, but
Yeah.
that's not to say we've done enough. Because if you look at, I know you're aware, in the contribution that the state makes to higher education, typically in the past, it used to be 70-30 state and then
Right.
relied on tuition and fees. And that has flipped, after the general administration and a little bit prior to that. It shifted to 30% state and 70% dependent upon fees and tuition and other things. I think we need to continue to work to getting it at a minimum of a 50-50 balance, which I think would help in terms of the state's investment in the people, and that would help, I think, keeping them here. So we need to continue to work to support financially higher education, but K through 12 and a lot of the programs, early education, and I think a lot of the things that we're working on and looking at trying to advance, helping folks to improve the school systems that they do have, and I think those are going to be important. And so, like everything else, it all comes down to funding, and I think we need to continue to, as we pursue improving the structural system within our school systems, also making sure we support financially higher education and looking at ways that we can continue to do that. And I think higher education has helped too, because they're recognizing that, the system of higher education is changing.
Right.
And we need to focus more on providing what the students need, not necessarily what universities believe that they need. And I think there's going to be a shift, and there needs to be a paradigm shift in how universities will service the people, the students that attend those universities, and making sure that they're providing them and preparing them for work or outside of once they finish. Believe me, I'd still be in college if my dad was paying for it, but unfortunately he's not. So it's great to be in school, but you need to use that to prepare you for eventually it's going to end. And so you need to be prepared. And I think universities are working toward and need to improve and are heading that way. Fletcher's a great example of that, is preparing people that when they're through school or they've achieved a degree or an excellence, that they need to now pursue a profession that'll support that. And universities need to work with them to do that.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. One of the things we did here at Fletcher after COVID and then after Hurricane Ida was really take a hard look at what our students needed and how we needed to deliver that, because we recognized that learning styles were changing. College-going behavior was changing. And so I'm really proud of the work that the team here at Fletcher has done in, for instance, launching 8-week sessions, right, where students can come in, they can study fewer number of subjects, maybe a little bit more deeply, but they go through more quickly. And that's one of the things that's most important. Our students, one of their greatest enemies to getting to that credential or that degree is time, because many of them are working, they're caregivers, they have a lot of responsibilities. And so finding ways to deliver education, whether it's in short-term certifications or in 8-week sessions, is really important, to meet the students where they are and to make sure that they have, again, that access that they need to be able to get to where they want to go ultimately. I do just want to say, though, as a little side note, funny story, I loved college, and so I decided, I was like, how can I stay at college forever? And here I am.
You have. You worked it out.
So there is a way to stay a college student pretty much forever, if you'd like. If anybody wants advice on that, please feel free to reach out.
But not your job is available just yet. You want to keep it.
Exactly. Correct. Right. I'm not ready to go just yet. So I want to switch a little bit now to talk a little bit about your public service again. And I'd like to know, I think that you're approaching the end of your time in the House. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yeah, we are term limited here in Louisiana, and you can serve 3 terms in the House and the Senate. And this is I'm in my 3rd term, so I have 3 years left. But yeah, this is it after this term.
Okay. So I know there's lots still of good things that are going to come from you and in support of our region. But any specific accomplishments you'd like to highlight, things that you're just most proud of? What would those be when you look back on your service?
I think first and foremost is looking at what we've done and what we've accomplished in providing, going back to coastal restoration and protection, but looking at some of the advancements that I was fortunate to participate in entities that were involved in it and advancing coastal restoration. And even in this region, when I first started at the levee district, we'd go to the Corps of Engineers and they'd basically say, there's no way the Corps is going to build a levee outside of New Orleans. So y'all are just, button up against windmills that'll never accomplish anything in terms of getting some flood protection down there, meaningful flood protection. So I think the working toward and working with both, the levee district and state government and others to advance that to where we now have a system that we can, it's obviously needs continues to need work, but we've demonstrated that this works, and it's provides significant protection and a reduction in cost to the federal government in terms of what FEMA and others would have to come back and assist and provide protection to the people. And why that's so important is, again, because of the people here in Louisiana and the culture and everything that we provide to the nation. We're a working coast, and for people to, work within oil and gas services, to provide fisheries and everything else, you have to do it on the coast. You're not going to commute from Arkansas,
Right.
well, although some people do from the oil and gas industry, but you're not going to live in Arkansas and come and crab and shrimp and do the thing, provide the resources that we do have. So if the people are going to, if the nation, the region, everyone else are going to rely on those people to provide those resources, and you provide resources to the nation, it's not so much to ask to support, to provide protection for the people to provide those services. And so I think that helps. I'm proud of the fact that we've worked on a system that provides people protection, a reasonable amount of protection, to continue to work and live here and make resilient communities, because Louisiana is a unique place, and it has its challenges in living here. There's no doubt, but it's worth all the challenges to be able to just live and work with the people here and within this environment. So I think that's probably my most proud achievement, is doing those type things.
Yeah, and the proof is really in the pudding, right? Because I heard some recent statistics. You probably know them better than I do, but in terms of the damage and the flooding and the devastation we've seen with prior storms, and then what we saw after Ida, and then after Francine, I think in particular. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, but I think I heard it was something like 8 homes flooded, and that was sort of, I don't know if that was the right
And it
number or
wasn't
not, but
necessarily from the storm surge,
yeah.
and that was the thing. And so you go back to when we actually started construction. The first part of Morganza to the Gulf was authorized when I was serving as a director, and how far we've come from that one particular segment of levee being constructed to where we are now. We have, for the most part, a system, or it's a closed system that'll provide that protection, that went from when we just had that one segment, when we had thousands of homes flooded in Hurricane, I think it was Bill and some others, that we went from, thousands of homes to hundreds of homes to tens of homes into this most recent storm. We had no flooding associated with the storm surge. And that's important because obviously, if not for the system itself, heaven forbid, loss of life, but also the reduction in terms of damage to property, or that the response that FEMA would have to have had provided, if not for that levee system, is close to $1 billion from this one storm event. So in addition to the protection of lives and homes and property, also the reduction in terms of what the obligation of the federal government would have been required, if not for the levee system, is so important.
Yeah, no, so big for our community, and really a crowning accomplishment for you. But I know we're going to
Well,
see a
not for
lot
me.
more
No,
in the
it's not.
3 years.
There's so many people involved. I mean, between the
Yeah.
levee district, and others, like Reggie, Clifford Smith, and all these other people who had such an important role and that made this happen. And I think there are so many people, levee district, who have been working on it now, and that's a thankless job. And having to do this, you always hear from people when you don't call them up and say, "Hey, look, you kept the water out of my yard. Thank you very much. You did a great job." It's mostly, "Hey, I got water in my yard or my ditch. What's you going to do about it?" So
Right.
it's important that I think there's so many people who've served and participated from the state level and local level that it's just a important accomplishment for the region that we've been able to do this.
Yeah, and it really does demonstrate the importance of community. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about living here and working here, is that sense of community that we seem to have within our region, within our parishes, and the passion that we have for where we live. And so excited about that. Well, we're almost at the end of our podcast, and so I have a couple of other questions for you. Hopefully, these will be a little bit easier than high finance at the state level, but want to just take a minute to maybe get to know you a little bit better. I love, I'm hoping on these podcasts that we will be able to talk to our guests not only about what they do in their professional lives and what they're doing on behalf of our community, but also just get to know you a little better. And so you have quite a reputation of being a celebrity MC around town. And so I want to know, what's your funniest joke?
I don't know about celebrities, kind of filling in. We need somebody to do this. Would you be willing to do it? Which I enjoy doing. It's always, but again, I put you on the spot. Try to pick your best joke. There's, apart from the Boudreaux and Thibodeau ones that are just out there. One of the things that I think find most interesting is the fact that we've advanced so much in terms of the space program and now working and going to Mars and all the other things, that so much so that we've built a restaurant. You've heard about the restaurant that they built on the moon?
No.
Oh, it's got great food, but just no atmosphere.
Perfect.
No.
You heard it here first, gang.
Yeah.
That's a great one. I love it. I love it. All right. And now a little bird shared with me that you have a kayak project.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about that. All they said was, ask Z about the kayak project. And so here I am.
Yeah, the kayak project that never ends. Carrie St. Pé, who actually used to be the director of the Berthier-Terrible National Estuary Program. He's retired now, enjoying life, I hope. And when I was at the Levee District, we convinced each other that we were going to build these kayaks and make them out of wood. And so I got the plans, got the book, and we got started. And we started working on this kayak. And my son was, who is now 26, was just born at the time. So it started it, and it was a joke that by the time we'd finish it, Zachary's going to be in kindergarten, and then Zachary is going to be, it'll be his graduation present in high school. So now he's in optometry school and he has 3 more years. So now maybe it'll be a graduate present when he finishes. Now, Carrie finished his, so I don't know if he's the bird or someone who told you, but obviously he rubs it in often that he completed his and I didn't complete mine. So it's still a work in progress. Right. I do have a kayak. Okay. But I figured if I was waiting for the one I was going to build, I'd never get to kayak fish. So I actually purchased your traditional, not traditional, but your basic plastic kayak. And so I do go kayak fishing. It's not within my own crafted, finished, built kayak, which ultimately someday I hope to finish, and I plan to do that. So, I appreciate you asking, and still working on it. It's a work in progress.
Wonderful. So do you do some of the kayak fishing rodeos that I've heard a lot about?
I didn't. I don't do the Ride the Bull, which is a great event. I mean, I go down to Grand Isle and have friends who do it, and it's a good event. If you kayak fish, it's always worth doing it. And so I've hung out with the folks and ridden with them and spent time with the kayak folks, but it's too many people, too crowded, that when I want to kayak fish, I want to get away from everyone. So I'll go and enjoy the experience, but I don't necessarily participate in it, but I do enjoy getting out there in the kayak and fish.
Awesome. And so who's going to test your homemade kayak when it's done? Are you going to put yourself in it, your son? I know our parish president recently sank in his kayak in a race recently, so he's used to having a little dip in the bayou. Anybody?
Well, this one will be made out of wood, so I don't think it may flip or turn. It may not be stable, but at least it won't sink. So at least I'll have something to hang on to. So maybe I'll take the initial run and see what happens. But I hope to get to where I actually can put it in the water relatively soon. So we'll see.
Sounds good. Well, when you have it finished, maybe you can come back and tell us about how it went.
I hope to do that soon.
Sounds good. Look, last question for you. Want to leave our listeners and folks who are watching out there, what's your best piece of advice that you'd like to share with our listening community?
From the legislative political perspective, I am convinced, and it's true, of the squeaky wheel gets the grease principle, because there is no doubt in seeing and working in the legislature that public participation and engagement involvement does have an impact, as well it should. And I think it's important that if there are particular issues important to a particular segment of the population or to higher education or industry or whatever, that they do make their concerns and issues known. And I think that's important because it does have, and again, as well as it should, an influence on and affects legislation and things that affect the people. So I think, the government and the process that we do have, our form of government, it may not be perfect and it may not be the best, but I believe it's the best that's out there. And so I think just, participate in government, it does make a difference, and you need to get involved. And it's not just beating your head against the wall, where a lot of people get frustrated, and I get it, because there's a lot of things that people expect government to do or government can do and can't always do it. But when there are things that government can have an influence, and part of the responsibility of government, having people involved and engaged in the process is important, and it does make a difference.
Oh, great advice. Great advice. And for everyone out there who's listening or watching, we are coming up on our legislative session in the spring. And so it is very timely in terms of reminding folks of their civic duty, not just to vote, but to also participate in the process. And so hope for those who have a vested interest in maybe some legislation that's up or want to advocate on behalf of a cause or something that they really believe in, to engage in that process. So I want to thank you so much for being here with me today and taking a few minutes out of your busy schedule to talk to us about some of the opportunities and challenges that are facing our great state and our community. And just want to thank you, as always, for your tremendous support of Fletcher Technical Community College. And thanks for being with us here on Bridging the Bayou.
Oh, pleasure being here, and thanks for having me. And again, it's part of the service that we do have, but it's a joy to support this institution because of the hard work that you and others have accomplished in terms of advancing the opportunities that Fletcher can provide. And so thank you all on behalf of the community and all you do for the people here in this region.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us here today on Bridging the Bayou, a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Thank you for listening to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.